Thomas Kloster. Thomas, thank you very much for being with us. You are an expert thinker of business, marketing, sustainability. You also have 2 books, Good Advertising and The Hero Trap. The Hero Trap. We are going to talk about this, but thank you very much for being with us today.
No, thank you, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person, but maybe next time.
Yes, and thanks to the technology that enable us to talk even we are apart. So can you tell me first about the Hero Trap? You showcase how organizations and leaders can spark the change by asking who can you help people become, right? And can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. I mean, the Hero Trap is the title of my second book, and I really felt there was a need to write a second book. I used to be a very staunch believer in purpose and companies and brands, using the marketing efforts for driving change, for doing something good. And then I recognized something a couple of years ago. In some ways, I should be happy because it does showcase a mainstreamification of sustainability, of environmental efforts and social efforts. But I did see a lot of companies did it wrong in the sense that they always made themselves the very hero of the narrative. And what I witnessed over those years was obviously each and every time you have a target in the US or Bud Light or someone else to go out and say, we believe in social issues, we're going to change, and we believe in diversity. At some point, somebody is going to call you out. So for me, the Hero Trap was really saying fundamentally, we need to sort of rethink how we communicate our leadership and companies' bigger societal role, and actually think about how do we actually drive change? How do we put ourselves in people's shoes? So the interesting thing is, when you ask the question, who can you help people become? You become customer centric. So you move from being sort of a navel gazing preacher to almost becoming a brand to coach that want to, enable better living. So that's the real paradigm shift that I'm talking about in the Hero Trap.
And how we can avoid this Hero Trap. And I think it would be quite interesting if you tell us how avoid the Hero Trap. But it's not the same if you are like a new company and you are born and you how to avoid it and how to avoid it when you are already an established organization and you have like a long history.
I mean, it's a really, really difficult time, to be honest. I mean, I've been on this journey for about 20 years, and I've seen the ups and downs, and obviously there's no more urgent time right now, as we're seeing with the floodings in northern Argentina, that there is focus that's never been as strong on the role of companies to do something about this. So that obviously also touches marketing, because if your CEO has to think about the longevity, has to calm investors that these things are in order, how do you then go to market? And I think the key challenge right now is, it's not easy to live sustainably. I think if you look at the ordinary Argentinian, it's probably not an easy pitch to say, go and live sustainably.
Yes.
And so the big question I asked myself was, in fact, with all these brands out there that talks about sustainable change, how many have in fact created change in your life? And for me, that's the real test of authenticity. So for me, the question that I raised in the beginning, who can help people become, automatically actually builds authenticity into your brand, because you're helping people on their journey. And so it's much more about choice. It's much more about empowering people to do the right thing. And it could be hard for, I think, a lot of brand marketeers to take that, shift in perspective, because it's so easy to go from talking about how great your product are in the world to also talking about how great your product are at saving the world. But I think it's about time to eat some humble pie and actually really understand, how do you actually drive that change on the ground? And the amazing thing about that, that I've unlocked through studies, is that when you do this right, your brand becomes more meaningful because you play a more meaningful role in people's lives. And secondly, which is even more interesting, there's a really good business case behind it. Because obviously, if you help people and your product becomes part of their change journey, there's a value to it. So that's a big important point around the shift that I had outlined in the hero trap and the methodology called the arrow.
It's like it's possible for a brand, for a company to be profitable at the same time that generates impact or has a meaningful positive impact also. But because sometimes we talk about impact, but you can have also a negative impact. So we can, as a brand, as a company, we can be profitable and also generate a positive impact and have a purpose.
Let's not fool ourselves. This is not an easy exercise. Yeah. I often talk about purpose being a two-headed monster. So one side is saying profit, 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 and the other one is saying let's do good to people and planet. And we know what happens when the next quarter results hit and they're not looking great. Then often profit wins. So it's a difficult balance, and it's definitely a difficult balance if you live if your reality is a publicly traded company, because those investors will punish you if you don't deliver. And so you can say, oh, but we're trying to do something for the long term. Again, what I saw with the hero trap is that when you can align those things, when your profitability is tied to the change that you want to enable in your customers' lives, it's one on one. Let me give you one really simple example. Oatly, they do oat milk. So obviously, the more successful they are at inspiring all of us to drink more plant-based or eat more plant-based, the better business case it is for them. Or if you're a health insurance company, and in the book I have a case from Discovery, a health insurance company that's in 7 markets. If you actually enable people to live healthier lives, and that's your primary focus, you'll have to pay out less in premiums. So healthier customers means a more profitable business. But it's not an easy time. And so often I hear people say, "Oh, but look at Patagonia, look at what Patagonia did." But I don't actually think that Patagonia is the best example, because Patagonia actually said, we're not going to stay a publicly traded company. We're going to create a nonprofit, and then we're going to do what we can do. So I really want to encourage everyone out there to think about how can we, if we're a publicly traded company, how can we still use our power to drive that change? And I think this is the time where sustainability is a bit like talking inflation in Argentina in some ways. I promise you, it's probably not going to go away. And so the earlier you as a brand, as a CEO, as a company start to think about these issues, the better equipped you are at navigating this very difficult reality.
And we have to do it like thinking this in the long term, right? Because sometimes, especially in the past, maybe companies used to think about the sustainability or more in terms of, corporate social responsibility, maybe like loan actions or short-term things. And now it's like we have to think of this like in every aspect of the company in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, it can be really exhausting, to put it that way. But obviously, it is great if you can move from a sort of quarterly result mindset to looking at a decade. But obviously, let's be real. There's lots of things that we're faced with as communication professionals, artificial intelligence and whatnot. The simple steps that I think is possible right now is actually to think about, so how can I help my customers in their journey? What are the simple choices that I can give people? And let's not, be overly idealistic about this. I mean, the Argentinian reality and the reality across the globe at the moment are not one of economic uprising and good days. It's been a bit of a tough ride. So what I really am passionate about is when you can bring the core principles of marketing, price, quality, and convenience, and you can still deliver a sustainable product. That's what excites me, because this is when it's scalable. So I think if you are on the early journey of sustainability, think about how you can offer maybe a more sustainable choice to your customers. Think about how you can maybe make that a more convenient choice, Or I know the agricultural sector in Argentina is big. You know, I'm a big fan of Argentinian wine, for example. And obviously being in the Nordics, we do enjoy a lot of fruits and vegetables from Argentina in our winter. And no doubt about it that if you want to compete in that market, you need to think about sustainability and as a value add. So there's a lot to unpack, but don't get blinded by, oh, change is too difficult. Do the small steps, because the small steps do actually also matter.
It's like for us people, like normal people, not companies, but you know, whenever someone says like you are taking out you're separating your trash, you know, plastic and not plastic, and there are people like taking private jets and doing a lot less than you, like you don't do it, but it's like every step really helps, right? And for the companies it's kind of the same, like even the smallest steps, it's better than no steps.
Yeah, and I think we need to also realize that the role of the CMO is also rapidly changing, right? I think one of the challenges is the amount of time people are in their jobs today. So how you're gonna create that long-term change? From I began my journey into doing good with the first book, Good Advertising, and now 2 decades later, there's very few brands around from when I started my journey. We've seen now how Unilever is doubling down on purpose. They have even lowered a lot of the sustainability targets, and we have seen similar from other brands. So there are still brands that obviously wholeheartedly believe in this and push this agenda. And I think also one thing I think we forget is that people, why I love sustainability as a marketing topic is it's about life. And we know emotional advertising work better. I mean, there's only so much time we can talk about the gigabytes on our hard disk or the size of our flat screens. But all these things about being being in Buenos Aires and not being stuck in traffic, living in a safe neighborhood, having clean air, all these topics are things that people really want to talk about. And so that's what can supercharge your marketing efforts when you do this really, really well. So I actually see it as a bit of as a superpower when done well.
Great. And you talk about good advertising. That was your first book. Tell us a little bit about the good advertising movement, how it has evolved in the last year, and what are you doing now? What is its purpose now?
You know, it's crazy to look back. As I said, it's 2 decades. 2 decades ago, it was the beginning of Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. At the time, I interviewed a lot of leaders in our industry, from Nike to agency side, etc. The whole role at that time with good advertising was just to say, what if we at advertising can actually start serving people's needs instead of pushing ones? Um, Fundamentally, that is as pivotal today as it was back then, and probably even more so, because one of the big shifts I'm seeing, which is really, really changing right now, is that I think the legitimacy of our industry is being challenged. I mean, when I talk to my two nieces that are 14 and 20, the reality and their view on advertising is fundamentally different. I think they look at us as oil executives. So somebody who is part of pushing more consumption, somebody who is part of not solving the problems at hand, but being part of the problem. So I think we are faced with a fundamental crisis if we don't solve a lot of these issues. And honestly, I think we can if we dare to reimagine a lot of these things. I mean, I'm from Denmark, and Denmark, I don't know how much you know about Denmark, but Denmark has in many ways been touted as a very green and sustainable country. But if you actually take a hard look at the fact, the average carbon footprint of a Dane is 13 tons, where we need to be reaching is 3 tons. So it's absolutely nonsense to talk about us being sustainable. And where I believe brands and leaders can still inspire this change is to think about the fundamentals. How can we help the average Argentinian lower their footprint? How can we help the average Argentinian with the budget that they have eat more nutritious food, not just food that are full of calories? How can we maybe help the help Argentinians not to maybe go and buy a car, but think about public transport, how we can make that high status. So there's so many things that I feel are pivotal things right now and that our industry needs to respond to. We could, when I wrote the first book, social media, it was the very curve of social media. Obviously, brands were becoming transparent. Now we're at a second and probably even more transformative period in time with obviously artificial intelligence.
That was also a question, like, how do you see these trends and these topics evolving in the future, especially now with the acceleration of the use of technology, artificial intelligence? We have like a whole new set of things transforming our reality.
I mean, it's crazy. Let's be honest. I mean, we are probably across generations. We're all one generation because we are the first generation in the world that are faced with such an accelerated change. It's almost like you're having a zebra that are giving birth to a lion. It's so unpredictable. Everything is unpredictable, and what markets like and what investors like are predictability. They want to know that what they invest in and how they spend their money is going to give a return. And so in that way, I think that sustainability is really one of those things where, for me, it's common sense. It's good leadership to think about risks. It's good leadership to think about opportunities in this space. I do also see that, obviously, AI. I mean, for years, I saw a lot of talk about how digital would empower people in their choices, how they shop, how they, and obviously we see a shift with direct to consumer brands. I do think AI is probably going to be one of those things that are going to create a different playing field in so many ways. Because if we can suddenly much more easily understand the data behind those companies and really dive into a very, very complex supply chain and see that in front of us, that really sort of truly unpacks what is right now hidden. So I think this is quite an urgent call to get your dirty laundry fixed in many ways. And again, there's also an extremely exciting transformative power in terms of AI and what AI can do in terms of solving a lot of these super interconnected conflicts. So so definitely AI is one of the big trends. I think we are seeing rising activism.
Right.
There was even reports out from the US recently that now the average American are feeling the day-to-day effects of climate change. And again, as I said, unfortunately, we are seeing that also up in northern Argentina right now. So this is not something that's distant that people can't relate to. This is something that will impact us. And again, across generations, across wealth. There's no doubt that there was a research out from New York Times just yesterday where they looked at insurance companies in the US. There was only only 6 states in the US where the insurance companies were profitable. The rest, either they lost money every 5 consecutive years or some of those years. And what that means is if you're a homeowner, you probably can't necessarily get a mortgage because if you can't insure your house. And so there's a lot of these transformative forces at play. So the activism that people get angry, the financial turbulence that comes from a lot of this unpredictability in our agricultural sector that cannot be certain in terms of its output, in terms of needs for people. So there's a lot of these things. And I know being an advertising and communication conference, why we're talking about all these like big external factors, but I think that is the pivotal thing right now. It is that our industry is not equipped to talk about these things. We weren't equipped when it came to social media, and we paid the price. We aren't equipped with AI, so we are faced with multiple challenges. So I hope at least that what I'm sharing today hopefully can at least open the audience eyes a little bit to becoming just a bit more curious about this and also being excited about this, because let's not make this about doom and gloom. There's an amazing opportunity to empower people, to create strong relationships with people, to play a real authentic role in people's lives. Because one of the outcomes that I found out in the Hero Trap book was, if your brand dares to play a role of change in people's lives, it becomes meaningful. And actually, some of the most valuable companies in the world are transformative. The Nikes and Apples of this world that use technology as sport to help us. So these are also good examples of how you can build magnificent legacy brands by actually doing this right, and by asking this one simple question: who can I help people become?
It's not too late.
It's not too late. It's never too late. I think there's too much doom and gloom, and I think what I still love about my colleagues in marketing and advertising is we have the ability to reimagine. We have the ability to tell stories about how much better a sustainable life can be. And I think we need to use that skill set, that storytelling skill set, to inspire leaders, to inspire the next generation, and hopefully also to give us all a little bit of hope in a world of recession and doom and gloom.
Thomas, thank you very much for your time. It was really great to hear your ideas and to think a little bit about the long term, but the short term, and also with the last message of hope and looking ahead.
Thank you so much. And I think the most reassuring message I can think of is, now you're going to listen to a lot of speeches today, but to your point as well, just think about one thing that you can take with you home tomorrow and change in your business. And if you just get that done, well done are you, because change really just begins with one individual's ability to say, I'm actually going to do it. So let's hope we're all going to be a room of change makers today. So good luck on the change journey.
Thank you very much for your time, Thomas.